The Utah Utes have a clear advantage going into their matchup against Arizona State, but can they exploit it? Let's discuss.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen and view of the day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. It's your first time joining this show. Make sure you like and subscribe. My name is JT Wistrcill. Excited to be joined by ESPN 700's Porter Larson, and me and Porter are going to be talking about, hey, the BYU-Utah game time was announced. Also talk about this Utah defense. It's going to try to slow down ASU. But first, let's start with what I teased, that big advantage that Utah has. And when I say a big advantage, I mean big literally. It's Utah's offensive line. Look, ASU has the second best run defense in the conference so far. But Utah's rush offense hasn't just been effective. In fact, it's the best in the Big 12. It's one of the best nationally. They currently rank 9th in yards per game at 242. I think the question will be, hey, how loaded of a box are they going to end up facing? Like, that's where it could become tough to run the ball, Porter. But this Utah offensive line, unless they're going against Texas Tech, it's an advantage this team has every single game. And I think Utah needs to win the trenches to beat the Sun Devils in this one. They got the talent up front to do it.
Yeah, you mentioned it, man. That's kind of the key, and it feels like it's going to be the key for Utah every week, right? Can you run the ball effectively, which we believe you can, but more can you use that run game to at least give some sort of verticality to your offense, to at least, as you mentioned, JT, stop the other team from just stacking the box entirely and, basically pinholing you into doing one thing. And that's what Utah's trying to avoid against ASU. You mentioned it. They have a good defensive line. They're pretty stout in the middle. It's probably, whether you go Texas Tech, BYU, Utah, it's probably ASU right there with those guys is the best, front interior defensive lines. And those are the units that we look at when it goes to the Big 12. So this is one of the biggest tests of the year for Utah. Obviously, it's a top 20 team. It's a defending conference champion. They're coming into Salt Lake, I'm sure, wanting to prove that they are, a contender to repeat as Big 12 champions. So, yeah, man, it's a big challenge. But as you mentioned, Utah does have an opportunity if they can just run the ball. Get to a point where ASU, is bringing a bunch of guys up front, and it gives Devin Dampier a chance to, as we saw glimpses of against West Virginia, get the ball downfield. Is that something we're going to see more of as the season goes along? Well, that's still a question mark, and it's also probably the biggest and most important question mark still on Utah's plate.
It absolutely is. And you mentioned ASU is a good D-line, but it's not Texas Tech. I mean, I had Shahan Jayaraja of CBS Sports on the show just yesterday, and he said, Tech might have all 4 defensive linemen go in the top 75 picks. ASU is not going to have that. So that's where Utah does have an advantage to me. It's still, Utah's offensive line to me is still a top 10 unit in the country. Is it one of the best? Probably not top 3, but it's still one of the 10 best, I'd say, right now. And what's interesting in this matchup is for Utah, against Tech, there were reps that Utah's offensive line generated movement on Tech's D-line. You're like, okay, here's a running play. But what was the problem? Safeties are playing close to the ball. They're flying in there, making a stop. And that's that extra defender who can't be accounted for because you're hoping that he's playing the pass. And right now, Utah needs to figure out how to threaten defenses downfield. You mentioned they did it against West Virginia, but this is a different test. Can you do it against an ASU defense that, Sawyer Robertson and Josh Hoover holding those guys both under 30 points, those offenses each for Baylor and TCU? That is still an accomplishment. So it's really interesting to me that what we're going to get to see from Dampier. I think that Utah will get enough plays down the field, but I am curious to see who steps up, Porter, because obviously the Tobias Merriweather, Larry Simmons, neither one of those guys are over 100 yards yet on the season, and that was not something I expected us to be talking about this far into the year.
Well, and the other thing is that the more and more we get down the slate, the more teams are going to start catching on to some of the stuff that Ryan Davis does to get open. Some of the schemes that Ryan and Devin like to work together on. Now, the good thing is that they're good together, just communicating, even just non-verbally, right? When a play breaks down, Ryan can get open and find a good spot. He's got a knack for that. So there's a part of that that's going to continue. But Utah's number one receiver is a guy who you can scheme against. You can kind of put up, watch some tape, and you can throw a guy on Ryan Davis and kind of contain him in a lot of different ways. So as you mentioned, in order to have what I think is sustained success down the field, there's going to have to be someone else that, doesn't have to be a number one receiver, doesn't have to be Darren Carrington, doesn't have to be 1,000 yards this season. It just has to be a guy that a few times a game, JT, 1-2 times a game, gives you a legitimate down the field threat, right? That keeps that safety just another second or two looking behind him, right? That's something that Utah hasn't really gotten. Jackson Benny's escaped a few times. We like to see what he's gotten downfield, but you just haven't really seen the type of downfield threats that you would like to have. And yeah, like you said, it's going to be the biggest question mark for sure, but it's something that's also going to dictate just how far Utah can go in 2025. And yeah, it's the story this week against ASU, but it's going to be the story against BYU, and it's going to be the story against a lot of other teams that match up similarly.
Yeah, this ASU defense isn't ranked in the top 8 right now, but of the Big 12, but it's still a good unit. And then Utah obviously sees a very good BYU defense the following week. So you do have to figure it out. And I like Ryan Davis, but he's not Jordan Tyson. Like Jordan Tyson on the other side, that's a guy who is going to get his no matter what. And Davis has done that so far. I hope he can continue to do that. But I agree. I think there's ways that teams will try to take him away. They're going to try and take Dallin Bentley away too. He's been really fun to watch. So Porter, it comes down to me. You said, who's going to be that guy who makes the big play? It's got to be Tobias Merriweather to me. You look 6'5", 200 pounds, and how close him and Devin Dampier have been multiple times this year to making a big play. He has generated a couple pass interferences, hit the big play against UCLA, but they need more consistency from Merriweather, and I think Dampier as well, probably, in throwing the deep ball. It's on both those guys, I'd say. It
is, absolutely. And who it comes from, to me, is, especially with the amount of weapons you have, it's negligible, right? It's about the production. It's about the yardage. It's about that 2 or 3 plays on film that has you getting the ball 30, 40, 45 yards downfield, right? And you'd like it to be Merriweather. You like it to be Simmons, right? Those are your kind of prototypical wideouts that are going to maybe give you the most. They maybe have what you'd like to see as the highest ceiling, but you also go inside. You see Dallin Bentley just getting better and better. You see J.J. Buchanan, who I think I mentioned it on this podcast, actually, JT, earlier in the year. Even though he's listed as a tight end, I think I said he's not going to put his hand in the dirt all year. I don't think we've seen J.J. Buchanan anywhere but outside, or at least, as a slot receiver. He's another guy you look at in that role, right? He's more of a pass catcher than he is a blocker. So, where it comes from, I don't care. You just need to see the production at this point, right? We are 5 games into the season, and we've only seen, JT, small glimpses of the verticality in this offense so far. And if we're nitpicking, this is a 4-1 team who I think should be ranked. If we're nitpicking, that's the big one so far.
Yeah, I totally agree. They got to find a way to make it happen. I agree. It can be whoever. I think if it's not Merriweather and Simmons, I don't know who it'll be. Maybe it will be that freshman tight end. I'd love that.
That's what they were brought here for. That's what they were brought here for. That's what Utah is. Listen, it's the conversation we have every year, is trying to get that outside guy, that wide receiver, that who is the next Drez Anderson, the Darren Carrington to come in. Well, I don't know. But if they can't find that one guy this year, then it's got to be by committee. And I think they have, if healthy, I think they have the personnel to do it.
Yeah, that's the hope, is that they can figure out a way to do it. But can this Utah defense figure out a way to contain Sam Leavitt and a productive ASU offense? We're going to talk about it in one moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by our great friends at Mazda. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride. With more IHSS top safety pick awards than anyone else, Mazda truly crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details. Mazda brings the same attention to how they craft every model. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but. with the smooth handling, intuitive controls, with all-wheel drive standard every SUV crossover, you can drive with confidence through almost any season with Mazda. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every moment count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, moved and be moved. You can check out Mazda's inventory today. Today's show also brought to you by our friends at Monarch Money. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. It's hard to keep track of it all. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal financial tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop, on your phone, wherever. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you've put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all of your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. You can identify the money that you aren't saving as much as you thought, and Monarch will help you notice ineffective investment allocation and discover forgotten 401ks from past jobs. Don't let this financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege. It's all caps, no spaces, LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with the code LOCKEDONCollege. Utah defense has been really strong yet again, Porter. But I think the question remains, when you still give up over 30 points at home, like, hey, how good is this defense? I would still look back and say, well, for the most part, they battled in well. They wore down. They were on the field a lot. Hammond came in and provided a crazy spark for that team too, because Utah did do a good job of slowing down Baron Morton. And I think when you look at the totality of that Tech performance, even though you give up 34, when you really dive into it, I feel like this Utah defense is ready for a test of a Jordan Tyson, a Sam Leavitt. Utah's done well against these number one receivers in the past, right? Like Noah Fafita last year, he was fine, but I don't think he went crazy against Utah. Morgan Scalley knows how to deal with some of the best players in the Big 12. And I think this Utah team is going to limit ASU, just like they did, held the Sun Devils in check down in Tucson for much of last year, Porter.
Yeah, and you mentioned, right, the number one wide receiver in Jordan Tyson. I'm really excited because this is the first time this year that I think Utah has faced a player who is like a 1A, right, as far as the wide receiver goes. So it's going to be a challenge for, assuming it's Elijah Davis out on the outside. Bryce Cotton, I'm sure, will be on him at certain points. I'm sure Smith Snowden will catch a coverage or two. But it's going to be interesting to see how Morgan addresses a 1A type wide receiver. Is there any sort of mirroring, right? Is he bringing one of the corners over, or is he comfortable enough with both of those guys that he doesn't feel the need to do that? That's something that I'm really looking forward to seeing against a Jordan Tyson. And he's going to have really all of his options available because of which is my favorite thing about Utah's defense so far this year, which is their ability to get pressure without blitzing. I think they're third in the country, third FBS in pressures without blitzing, right? So you're only sending 4. Your blitz rate is third in the country. And that's John Henry Daly, of course, who has been a absolute monster, relentless on the outside. And it allows Morgan Scalley, who loves blitzing, right, to really do whatever he wants. When you're able to get pressure with just those 4 guys, 45% of the time, I think, is the snap count that they're getting pressure with just 4. It just leaves your playbook so open, and it leaves your options wide open if you're Morgan Scalley. And against this ASU team, that probably means we're going to see a lot of man coverage on Jordan Tyson with, in my estimation, some help over top, right? That doesn't necessarily mean you're going to see bracket coverage or, star coverage, which is almost a essential double team. Mm-hmm. But I do think you'll see if Utah stays in a single high, or if they have the nickel, they'll shade it towards Jordan Tyson for sure, just to give some extra help to that side of the field.
I totally agree. I think he's the only one on the team with over 200 yards receiving on the season. Like Utah's not the only team in the Big 12 who is looking for those other pass catchers to emerge. This is to me where I'm Utah. Don't let the best guy beat you. Morgan Scalley does a great job of not allowing that to happen. I do think one question though, Porter, will be is, hey, how much at full strength is the Utah defense? Thankfully, Kyle Whittingham did tell us none of the injuries against West Virginia were season ending. So that's a big news. We'll have to wait and see what the injury report comes out as coming up here. But Porter, I am a little concerned about this Utah defensive tackle room. It's something we've been talking about for a while coming into the year. And the guys have played well so far. Yeah, they got beat up against Tech at times, but Tech is also, they're a top 10 team legitimately in the country right now. To me, where I get concerned is we know Vaimahi's been banged up. Vakalahi's banged up too now, Porter. That's a lot of freshmen. I like what Lae has done, but you're asking a lot of Kafusi, Pupu, I think it is. That's just a lot from some really young guys against an ASU team too, that I will say they have 4 or 5 starters back from last year's O-line.
Yeah, if we go back to fall camp, I remember asking Morgan Scalley going into fall camp and before kickoff, what are your questions remaining? Like, what are you still unsure about? And he said, it's kickoff time, so I don't have real questions about anything, but the biggest concerns left were depth at defensive tackle and depth at corner. Now, there's 2 parts there. Depth because you need a lot of bodies, right? But also depth because Morgan Scalley particularly loves to go through a bunch of different personnel at those positions, right? We know famously Utah loves to run in their defensive tackles over and out and back and forth and all the above, right? The same with corners. Those guys are switching in and out all the time. Those guys are switching from nickel to corner to outside. They're running on and off the field. This is something that Morgan does at a rate that exceeds probably just about anyone in college football. So he just needs a lot of fresh legs out there. He needs a lot of guys that are able to go out and get, 5, 10, 15 reps a game. And right now they just don't have that in the defensive backfield or the defensive tackle room. So yeah, like you said, man, that's going to be a huge point of focus. You mentioned Johnny Laea. Man, that's a kid who maybe has been among the most underrated players for Utah so far this year. But if you don't have Aliki Vimahi, if you don't have, Dallas
as well, yeah,
Dallas Vakalahi, if you don't go 4, 5, sometimes 6 deep, then that isn't Morgan's full repertoire. That's not his full arsenal, right? So that's something that for Utah to be at full strength, which is what the question you posed was, they need 4 defensive tackles that are ready to go. I think right now they've got 2. They've sometimes got 3 depending on the health. And right now they're hoping to get that 4th guy back from injury. I'm maybe more concerned about the backfield and the safety position.
Oh, really?
How serious is the Nate Ritchie injury? Yeah. And when and if Nate Ritchie is back, what level is he playing at? Because he has been really kind of hot or cold this year. I thought it was maybe some mission legs early on, right? Getting that back under him, but he looked so good one week and then so bad another that it's hard to really pin down what it is that's going on with Nate. Here's what I'll say about Nate. He is so good at recognition, play recognition, seeing what's in front of him and knowing what's going on. But there's been times that, you watch this play develop and you see him get in the perfect spot. And then the moment of him one-on-one with a guy and he misses the tackle. That's happening a bit this year. I think that Nate will get back to what was his freshman. I want to say like all conference when it comes to freshman performance before his mission. I think he'll get back to that level, but he's got to be healthy to do so. Beyond Nate, there's the other Nate Tillman. There's some bodies at safety, but you're getting real thin in that safety room, especially when you're already bringing guys over from the offensive side.
Really thin. You mentioned Richie's issues tackling. Teo, again, has had his issues tackling this season too. So that's unfortunate when your last line of defense is tackling issues. That's something that, what were you going to say?
Well, and to their defense, at least, part of the reason that there are so many like one-on-one tackling in front of them is that there's some missed tackling in front of them, right? There's been some missed tackles on the front seven as well, and that's leaving like a lot of one-on-one opportunities for Nate and for Teo. And usually, if you're a defensive coordinator, you really never want your safety and a running back one-on-one. That's putting them in a bad position. That's putting your defensive backs in a bad position because the stuff in front of them is not being executed. And then there, as you mentioned, the last line of defense. If your safety, like we saw with Richie a few weeks ago, is getting 13, 14 tackles in a game, that's because the guys in front of him aren't recognizing stuff quick enough, and he's having to be that safety valve. And that's a little bit of an issue too.
That's absolutely fair. Like, they have been asked to do a lot, and this Utah team, just tackling being an issue, has been a little bit of a surprise. Better against West Virginia, but at the same time, this is a massive leap up. This isn't Texas Tech skill talent, but Jordan Tyson's the best receiver Utah's seen so far. ASU's got Leavitt, who he's more than capable of doing some of the things that Hammond did. So you got to tighten up the tackling, and it's a test coming up for Utah this weekend. But the following weekend, they'll also have a test because Utah, BYU, that's right, rivalry back on year 2 in the Big 12, and we got our kickoff time. What time slot is it? And what does it mean? We're going to tell you in one moment. Today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by our friends at PrizePicks. Every day we make decisions, but on PrizePicks, being right can actually get you paid. Don't miss the excitement this football season with PrizePicks. It's just good to be right with PrizePicks too. I mean, because playing PrizePicks is such fun. I mean, it's simple ways to add more excitement to football. You just pick more or less on player projections like, hey, Josh Allen's passing yards or Saquon Barkley rushing touchdowns, and you're all in. I love how quick it is. You can make your lineup in under a minute. My favorite part too, PrizePicks just added stacks. So if I want to ride with a player, I can select their pass yards, rush yards, and touchdowns all in one lineup. It's also fun to follow other players in the app and copy their lineups with one click. And the new injury reboot feature, if your player leaves early and doesn't return, it won't count against you. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege, all caps and no spaces, to get $50 in lineup after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONCollege, all caps and no spaces, for $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. Utah versus BYU will not be played at 10 a.m. Not that there was never much doubt, but I'm sure some fans that everyone after going through that again, we're probably like anything but a 10 a.m. kickoff. And we will get a 6 p.m. Mountain Time kickoff for Utah versus BYU. It's going to be on Fox, a big stage. Rivalry games like this, like, I'm good with the Ohio State-Michigan one being at noon. That's just something we've come to know. But for the most part, rivalry games need to be played under the lights and at nighttime. This is the spectacle, the spotlight that this rivalry game deserves. I love it's going to be on Fox, and I'm excited for it. Porter, your reaction to the kickoff time is what?
For me, I'm always one that I for the most part could care less about the kickoff time, right? I do think that if you are the home team, if you're Utah at home at Rice Cycle Stadium, if you're BYU at home at Lavelle Edwards Stadium, I think a night game is a little better atmosphere. I always Vegas usually builds in like 3 points, maybe 3.5 points for a home team. I think it's almost, if it's a night game, I like to even add like a point, right? I just feel more comfortable with the team in those kind of atmospheres. Now, it depends on the stadium. If you're in an empty, Palo Alto, it's not quite the environment that I'm talking about.
Yeah,
but
UCLA, yeah.
You understand. But a night game in Provo, it's one where a lot of the rivalry has been played in like Pac-12 after dark feeling, even though a lot of it's been in the Mountain West and BYU is independent. That late night stress is very it's very comfortable for this rivalry. It's very recognizable for all of these fans for both teams. So it's perfect. I like you. It just feels a little off when it's a day game and a rivalry. We're supposed to be playing under the lights. That's for me. That's always kind of the preference. But other than that, I don't take too much stock in it.
No, I agree. I mean, I was fine with the kickoff earlier against Tech because it gave Utah that national spot. I love that. I just think rivalries, I like when it is a big deal as a night game like this. And it's going to be. And this is going to be a fascinating game, Porter. This is the first real test BYU will face. Utah will have been tested twice by the time they get here. But I'm someone I've said consistently, coming into the year, I still feel like I had Utah ranked higher than BYU. BYU has done nothing to change my mind in that. They've beaten the teams they were supposed to beat. I could argue right now of all the top 25 teams, they have the least impressive win, if we're going their best win compared to anyone else too. I think it's hard to figure out what they are with their true freshman quarterback, with still some questions as the other pass catchers who are stepping up. A defense that I like, but once again, they've yet to really play even a good offense, I would say. Porter, what do you make of this BYU team so far?
No, you're right in the fact that we don't know yet just because of the competition. They've looked good. They've looked clean, but looking at their slate before the season started and knowing that they had a freshman quarterback, you looked at it and you're like, damn, that's kind of perfect to be starting a freshman quarterback with this schedule, because you really kind of ease into it, and then the gauntlet is at the end of the year. Now, the issue there is that then you have a month and a half of the end of the year where you're playing a bunch of ranked teams. You're going on the road. You're playing Utah, right? That there are a lot of pros to having that lighter schedule to begin. But now if you're BYU, you're ranked, the pressure is going to get higher, and the competition just gets stouter and stouter, it seems, as the schedule goes along. So like you alluded to, we still have a bit to learn about BYU. I think more specifically Bear Bachmeier, who we know about BYU's defense. Jay Hill's got that thing humming. Will Farron's a really good kicker. They've got the special teams for the most part figured out. That team goes as far as Bear Bachmeier takes them, and he has shown, number one, that he's a freshman. He's looked at times like a true freshman, but he's also looked really, really composed, and he has put the ball on the money. I think his best performance, as most will agree to, was just this past week. And, I think it's a team that is getting better at the right time. That's the best. That's the thing about BYU, is that they kind of were easing into it a little bit as the season came along, as you're trying to break in a new quarterback. And now I think they're really hitting their stride, but those questions do remain a little bit. And some of them are somewhat similar to Utah's. Good defenses. They can run the ball pretty well. You kind of know what you're going to get up front on both sides. And the question mark is, what can you get verticality, right, on the offensive side? What can you get down the field? Although it's different between Devin Dampier and Bear Bachmeier, right, in the limitations, they're not the same player at all. It's similar in how we feel about these teams, and the fact that we're still a month and a half into the season, kind of asking some questions about the explosiveness of the offense, not necessarily the overall production.
Yeah, and if you look at BYU's upcoming schedule, I mean, we're talking about learning about this team. They're going to go to Arizona, then take on Utah at home, then at Iowa State, then at Texas Tech, then TCU, then at Cincinnati. I would say right now, as we sit here, in all 6 of those games, the better quarterback will be on the other side. Bear can play better than some of those guys, and I still think BYU will absolutely win some of those games. I think they're a clearly better team than Arizona, so they should win there. But how is Bear going to perform in some of those games, especially a couple of those being hostile road environments, more so the Tech and Iowa State ones than anything else? There's still so much we get to learn about these teams through as the season goes on. College football, you get different tests, different outcomes. It's going to be a blast to continue to watch and see how it plays out. Porter, it's always a blast to have you on, my friend. Thank you so much for making the time. Please let everyone know where they can find you at.
Yeah, JT, obviously, socials, easy to find all of our stuff there, but ESPN700sports.com. And then game days, about 4 hours before kickoff, I go live with a cast of usually former Utes that join me on the pregame show.
Make sure you guys give him a follow at Lars_ESPN on X. Thanks for stopping by, Porter.
Thanks, JT. As always, appreciate you, man.
That's going to do it for today's Locked On Utes. We'll be back with you tomorrow talking the latest things all relating to Utah football.